You're taking a live look at Mount Hood. There is a particular moment in Mount Hood history that has been seen by millions of people around the world. We're talking about a rescue helicopter crash that happened 10 years ago tomorrow. So many of us watched that moment right on live TV. Others heard about it and then called up the video on YouTube. The rescue crew sent in to save some climbers suddenly became the emergencies themselves. Our own Pat Doris was in Sky 8 that day, giving us a play-by-play as all of this unfolded live. Pat joins us now. Pat, you reunited all the key players.
Well, a lot of them anyway, Stephanie. Even 10 years later, the memories are crystal clear about what happened on that day. I wanted to catch up and talk to them about that day and what they're doing with their lives now. There are moments in life.
I've got 7 down in there, and I've got 4 that are injured.
For which nothing can prepare us.
Look out, guys.
And the way we respond.
Hang on, fellas. Oh, my goodness.
Can mean the difference between life and death.
Oh, that is horrible.
And radio traffic was coming in.
These pararescuemen, PJs, share a part of Mount Hood history. May 30th, 2002, they were here when a rescue helicopter suddenly crashed.
Oh God, here we go.
10 years later, we brought them back together to talk about that disastrous day and the moment their world spun out of control.
There's Martin. Yeah, Martin's out. Now he got chopped, and then there's me.
They were on the mountain to help with a rescue effort. That morning, 9 climbers had fallen into a deep crevasse near the summit. 3 were already dead. 4 others were critically injured and needed an airlift off the mountain. As the day wore on, 2 patients were safely rescued. Then, just before 2 p.m., the Air Force Pavehawk moved into position to hoist a 3rd hurt climber. I reported on it live from 3 miles away in Sky 8.
And I know that it's agonizing as the moments tick by for the families at home that might even be watching this.
But then your kind of training kicks in.
Andrew Canfield stood in the back, ready to treat the patient. A safety harness held him inside the chopper. Suddenly, he sensed something wrong and unclipped the harness.
Yeah, I was going to jump out.
You're going to jump out.
As soon as it started kind of like wobbling and moving around, I just. Yeah, that was my first thought. I was like, I'm out.
But the Pavehawk pivoted quickly, and suddenly the drop was too far. And now Canfield had no safety line. He grabbed Darren Shore, now a firefighter.
I don't know what it is, but it's not right. And that's exactly what it felt. It's like, this isn't right.
As we all watched on live TV that day, the helicopter crashed.
Wrong. Hang on, fellas. Oh, my goodness.
Inside the Pavehawk, loose gear punished the men as the chopper began its roll down the mountain.
I could see gear, packs, snow, all kind of churning around. And I use the sock and a dryer analogy for that one.
Their world slowed. Time stretched.
And I had this really elaborate plan where I was going to grab onto something and kind of shimmy up and jump out the door as, it rotated around. It never worked out.
The rolling machine picked up speed.
As we started to roll, the centrifugal force increased, and I kind of got outstretched, until I just couldn't hang on anymore, and that's when I, popped and it ejected me out of the aircraft.
On the video, you can see Canfield fly out the open door. He enjoyed only the briefest moment of relief.
When I got ejected from the helicopter, I felt like, oh, thank God, I'm free of the helicopter. I'm going to be okay. And then just an instant after that, I realized that I was downhill from the helicopter and that it was overtaking me.
He lunged downhill as if his life depended on it. A losing race.
I rolled like 8 times before it rolled over me.
Incredibly, the snow, usually an icy crust, gave way just enough to keep the Pavehawk from crushing Canfield.
Pretty frightening experience. I don't know, I guess the best way to describe it would be like laying down in the middle of a train tracks and allowing a freight train to roll over you.
He emerged with burns from the hot engine cover, along with neck and back injuries, but alive.
Life itself is so precious, and that was kind of what was going through my head at the time.
Unlike Canfield, Shore, tethered into the back of the chopper, could not escape.
So in my mind, I was envisioning one of 2 scenarios.
He would die in both.
Either we were going all the way down to the timberline on the lodge side, or we were going over the cliff. So I didn't really anticipate a good outcome.
Fortunately, the same soft snow that saved Canfield stopped the Pavehawk from rolling all the way down the mountain. Shore ended up sitting on the roof inside the chopper. and confronted a new danger.
I could smell the fuel and I thought, oh, well, great, survived the crash and now it's going to catch on fire.
But it did not. With a broken leg and ribs, he limped up the hill to join Canfield. Both spent time in the hospital, but remarkably, no one died because of the crash.
Yeah, see how far I got pitched?
A decade later, the PJs have seen combat in Iraq, Afghanistan, and elsewhere.
If you look at it like a cat with 9 lives, I've probably expended 9 of them. So I'm living on borrowed time at this point.
The crash on Mount Hood gave each a new perspective on life.
Take advantage of what you have now, because there's just no way you know it's going to happen.
The mountain changed them for the better.
I'd like to think that since then I've been able to better myself and try to spend more time with my family and just try to do some of those things that make life worth living.
In the decades since the crash, Andrew Canfield has remained a PJ. He lives in the Bend area with his family. He still has back and muscle pain from his injuries. Darren Shore quit the military and is now a full-time firefighter. And how's this for a small world? His trainer in that new job turned out to be the hurt climber who was attached to the helicopter when it began to crash. Now, coming up tonight at 6, part 2 of the Mount Hood crash series, you'll hear from the rescuers who were on the ground. And then tonight at 11, the finale, an exclusive interview with the helicopter pilot who's been silent for the past decade about this crash. Wait till you hear his answer when I asked him if it was a mistake to try the rescue.
It was 10 years ago that a rescue mission on Mount Hood spun out of control. A group of climbers had taken a terrible fall and a military helicopter moved in to save them. Then that helicopter crashed. Tonight we experienced that disaster through 2 rescuers standing right under the helicopter as it went down. News Channel 8's Pat Doris brought us the crash live from Sky 8 at the time. He's here now, and Pat, this was a scene few of us will forget.
Well, I know what you mean, Joe. On May 30th, 2002, we were carrying the rescue efforts on Mount Hood live during the day. 9 climbers had fallen into a crevasse. 3 were already dead. And as bad as things were, they were about to get worse. From the air, you could almost imagine these climbers were enjoying a break on this clear but windy day on the mountain. But in fact, they were caught up in a life and death struggle. 3 men were dead inside the crevasse. 2 critically hurt climbers had already been airlifted out. Now, an Air Force Pavehawk helicopter moved in to pick up a 3rd. Battling a powerful downwash, rescue volunteer Michael Lemming carefully connected a cable from the chopper to the patient.
I had just hooked the cable to the patient, and you don't look up a lot. You're wearing goggles, but you got 140-mile-an-hour winds or whatnot, so you got a lot of stuff coming at you.
Nearby, rescue team leader Steve Rollins felt a growing dread.
If you look at the video, you'll see way too many people underneath that helicopter.
He'd worked with helicopters up here before and knew the Pavehawk had little extra power this high.
Really, the idea that that helicopter could crash was not in the back of my mind, it was in the forefront of my mind.
He yelled at other climbers to move down the hill.
I was definitely concerned about that possibility.
No one seemed to hear. Then Lemming noticed something strange.
But I had a bunch of slack in the cable, and I didn't know why, and I looked up, and that's when the copter was, kind of coming down on us.
Hang on, fellas. Oh, my goodness.
In seconds, the helicopter slammed into the mountain. The first rescue crash here ever.
Good Lord. Oh, fellas.
And I looked up and I saw it turn around and dip down, and I thought, that's odd, that shouldn't be doing that. And then I saw the refueling nozzle hit the snow. And then I'm like, oh, this isn't good.
Rollins could not look away.
It was one of those quintessential dreamlike experiences where your adrenaline's going, everything's slow motion, you've got tunnel vision, and I can't believe what I'm seeing.
The flight engineer on board had cut the cable at the first hint of danger, which saved lives. But now the chopper was gone, rolling down the mountain. An eerie scene unfolded. The contrast startled Rollins.
You can't see, you can't hear anything. And then as soon as those rotors sheared off, it went from deafeningly loud to dead silent. And all you heard was the kerchunk, 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 kerchunk of the helicopter rolling down the hill.
Lemming remembers another sound.
The sounds, and they, I don't know if they haunt me, but they're still in my head, is of people screaming.
He ran down the hill to where the Pavehawk stopped upside down.
It was gushing fuel on the engines, on the hot engines, and that made me a bit nervous.
Many that day thought the helicopter would blow, but it didn't. And incredibly, no one died as a result of the crash. But those who lived through it can still hear it, feel it, and will remember it forever.
I think everybody walked away that day feeling really lucky and feeling like they helped somebody, but having a better appreciation of life too.
Since that crash, the first thing rescue teams do now is clear out anyone who's not essential to the effort, just in case the unthinkable happens again. Tonight at 11, my exclusive interview with chopper pilot Grant Dicely in his first interview since the crash, what he remembers about that fateful day and about his decision to fly.
Remember where you were 10 years ago tomorrow? A lot of us do. It's the day the Air Force helicopter crashed on Mount Hood. News Channel 8's Pat Doris was the only reporter live on the air when it happened, reporting the disaster from Sky 8. Over the years, many of those involved have told their story publicly, but one man remained silent, shunning all interview requests for a decade, until now.
So you guys are way up high there? Yeah, the cockpit's up there, and the window you see right here low is right by our feet.
A little different than a helicopter?
Yeah.
Meet Grant Dicely, former helicopter pilot and now the man who controls a massive C-17 cargo jet.
It's designed for assault landings, which is a steep angle of a approach, and put it down in a short amount of time.
He's faced danger repeatedly.
How many times have you been to Afghanistan? Oh gosh, quite a few.
But few things as harrowing as the crash on Mount Hood a decade ago.
I think God's looking out for me. That's evident from the mountain. I'm sure He was with us that day. And
that day,
so yeah,
May 30th, 2002, Dicely and his crew were trying to rescue a critically injured mountain climber above 10,000 feet. They knew they were pushing their Pavehawk to its limits.
So, and that's what we were doing that day on the mountain. You know, we were right at the edge of our operating capability.
And most of the time,
yeah,
that's okay.
Yeah, most of the time. And unfortunately, that day, Mother Nature had other plans for us, and I guess the video shows the rest.
Oh, brother, does it ever.
There we are talking about things going wrong. Hang on, fellas. Oh, my goodness.
As the helicopter crashed, I reported on it live from Sky 8 and watched along with our audience in horror.
You're watching this live, folks. Oh, if only this was a movie.
Yeah, I believe Marty right here.
Dicely invited us up to his base at McCord Field to talk about that fateful day.
When you watch it, does it kind of bring back those feelings?
I'm kind of getting a little jittery right now while watching it. Like I say, I don't watch it all the time, and you know.
The pilot said he'd flown several rescues on Mount Hood and knew his chopper's weight would be an issue up at the crash scene. But he did not plan to go that high. He intended to fly halfway up and let his PJs in the back climb the rest of the way. National Guard helicopters, which weighed less, had already airlifted 2 patients from the crevasse. But as Dicely's Pavehawk sat here at Timberline, the crew learned a 3rd patient up on the mountain had turned critical. They decided to go get him. As Dicely hovered, the wind switched from the front to the back, and he had no power to recover.
And when you see the tail bobble and then the tail swing, that's basically when I knew things were going south.
You had said earlier you could have avoided the crash, right?
We could have avoided the crash and come down, but beneath us are 20-odd people below us, so then you're in worse condition. So rather than have a huge tragedy there, I chose to take it down the mountain and try to get away from the folks.
Many on the mountain called him a hero for avoiding everyone on the ground. Dicely shrugged it off and credited his training, but he knew he was in trouble that day.
And I realized I don't have control of that helicopter anymore.
In the 4 seconds it took to hit the mountain, time crawled.
So I went through denial, and then time slowed down, and I was thinking about my wife and my daughter and my mom and my dad, and not the life flashing before your eyes, but there was a lot of time to think about some stuff.
He had hoped to land pointing up the mountain, but the rotors hitting the snow spun the Pavehawk and set up its roll. Months later, an Air Force investigation would conclude the crash happened because of a series of avoidable aircrew errors.
This experienced crew should never have placed themselves in this situation.
Dicely disagrees.
In hindsight, was it a mistake to go up because you were so close to the line?
No, and that's funny. We've had, the crew members and I have had discussions since the accident and immediately after the accident, and I asked them, would you do it again? And every single one of us agreed, yes, we'd do it again. And I also, you want to fly with me again? And they all flew with me again. So, I mean, we all would have done everything the same way we did them. We were doing our very best to try to help somebody out.
Wow, I have a lump in my throat. Dicely credits his commander, Mark Kyle, now a 2-star general, with giving him the confidence to fly choppers again shortly after the crash. The Pave Hawk proved to be just as resilient as its pilot. Pat tells us the Air Force brought it off the mountain and fixed it. It flew rescue missions in New Orleans after Hurricane Katrina. And we're told it was finally shot down in Afghanistan 2 years ago.